Hello and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. I am here today with Dara Goldberg, and I'm so excited to talk with you today, Dara. Dara and I met on Clubhouse. So everybody's been talking about the Clubhouse app and how there's kind of a divide. Some people love it, some people aren't into it. I am finding it amazing for making connections with people. Yeah. So welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word, Dara.
Thank you.
Yes. Start out by telling us a little bit about not your entire background in childhood, but what was it, were there values and beliefs instilled in you what were the values and beliefs that were instilled in you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, from an early age, I had that, and certainly the way I was brought up was I need to try to save the world. And not that everything about the world was bad, but this feeling that, it's kind of not just wanting to contribute or do the right thing, but that it was my responsibility to contribute all that I can. At the same time, I wasn't the most confident, kid, and I looked for affirmation from others, and it really took, and my story is not unusual or certainly not unique, but it is what it is, which is it really took till my 20s and even into my 30s where I started coming into my own and realizing, even one day it was that epiphany, I need to think I'm remarkable, I want to really believe the world needs my remarkable talents and wisdom and all that. And I spent so much time waiting for other people to think it so that I'd think it. So that kind of led me down a good path, which was getting an opportunity career-wise to help build up a firm and that worked with nonprofits and foundations. So that kind of filled the intellectual interest and the, social give back piece. And that worked for a really long time. It met my needs. It was so important to me. And then it wasn't. And
what changed?
Yeah, my first thought was something's wrong with me. And, I was 41-ish when it started to really, and I thought, unravel. And I thought, I have brain fog, I'm losing my memory early, is this early onset dementia? I was really kind of blaming myself. I don't even know that blame was the word. I was feeling scared and confused.
Sure.
And, my work ethic was down. I wasn't as motivated. And it wasn't, it was a lot of self-reflection. It was talking to friends, to my support system. And I realized that what had happened was it wasn't, I was single most of that time. So I was, in a kind of a real sense, married to my job. And
Okay.
It was meeting my need for a sense of purpose and meaning and value. And then it wasn't. And I went inward and said, that's a problem within me, and it's a problem I have to solve on my own. And
What was it, how did you get that idea that it was something that you had to go inward to solve?
yeah, I think part of it was I was motivated and kind of together in all other aspects of my life. It wasn't, I did think I was having kind of a midlife crisis, but it was compartmentalized. So it was this sense that something's not right and the feelings are really uncomfortable. I mean, I've always been someone who likes to self-reflect and do all that. And I just want to underscore that I'm so thankful that I didn't take it on as a problem I had to solve on my own, because I absolutely reached out and got incredible guidance that I needed. I mean, I wouldn't have figured it out on my own, so I shouldn't say it that way. It's that through getting help and, really talking about it, I realized what was happening was those emotions were there and they were awful. Like I was anxious and I was feeling lost and like upset with myself for not even wanting to go to work, let alone not caring enough about deadlines. I wasn't performing well. Yeah. But those were the emotions. And beneath that, and again, with help, I could clear the clutter and see those are the emotions that were bubbling up. But they were the data that was telling me, I mean, I didn't understand it at the time, just to be clear. They were the data saying, Dara, you've changed. Like you are, and I call it the space, you're in that space between who you have been for so long and who you're becoming. And it's this really uncomfortable space of not knowing who you are. And I wonder, if your listeners, your midwife women listeners are saying, yep, I get it. I mean, I would assume some of them do, because that's what happens.
I'm sure, and the thing is that it's hard to sit in that space and to realize that this is part of the process. Because you're so stuck on questioning what is wrong with me. Why can I not be happy, or why can I not still be functioning the way I was 20 years ago? What is wrong with me? And we tend to look at, we turn it inward and what is it about me? And congratulations to you for getting outside help, because as I've spoken with some of my other guests about, there's a lot of times tends to be a shame around that. There is no shame in getting help. We all need it. No one can go through this life all alone.
Yeah, and and in my family, like with our kids, like we have daughters, and it's been really important that they understand, if you don't want to talk to us, there are plenty of people to talk to, right? And from a young age, you want to create this sense of, you don't have to be fine, to the point of the name of your podcast. Like, don't say you're fine if you're not fine,
Right.
And don't be ashamed of it.
So then what happened? So you went through this exploration. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. And I realized that, and again, for other people, it's not the career piece that kind of bubbles up. I mean, for me, it was a bubbling up from within, right? Like my career wasn't working for me. So I knew I needed to take a risk that people thought was crazy. I was doing well, making decent money, all that stuff. And I loved my firm and my colleagues and everything. And I pivoted and said, I need to make a change. But I'm going to interrupt myself if you don't mind. Just saying.
Go right ahead.
That, mine bubbled up from within. But some people, some women get put into that transition space that I'm talking about from external things, right? Like an empty nest is a key one, where you've had this identity, you've had structure to your day, you've had a sense of value, like those carnal needs. You have been meeting them and you had that foundation, and then it's rocked, right? It's not a breakdown, but it's hard. And it's that period that, instead of calling it a midlife crisis, if you called it midlife reflection, midlife curiosity, midlife adjustment, and then midlife growth.
I do not like that word, midlife crisis, or that term. I think it's, your words, your terms are much better.
And anybody can use their own terms. But I will say, and it's not my quote, this woman, Ellen Galinsky, she had a great point, which is we don't have a vocabulary for transition, for what I'm talking about. When you go through a period where you question your purpose and meaning in life. It's almost like we came up with this midlife crisis term because we hadn't come up with anything else. And she talks about like really changing or creating the vocabulary that puts it not in a shameful, it's you, get it together way. And that's what I try to do when I work with. So I pivoted, I guess is the point. And I started working with women in midlife, going through that period of transition and knowing something's not right, but not necessarily knowing why. Or there's times where I gave the example, the empty nest or losing your job or a relationship breakup where why, you kind of fell into this period, but then what? Right. And so that's where I come in.
Yeah. And a lot of women, people in general, but a lot of Gen X women are especially feeling this, I think even more now in the past year with pandemic, because that has placed more stress and strain and put more people into that external situation that you're talking about. Or even if it is internal, it's given them time to reflect, whereas maybe they were so busy running from one thing to the next before. Now when they were stuck at home, they had nothing to do except reflect.
And that's a great example. We were absolutely thrown into transition, right? Like the structure of our day, like what was giving us purpose if we had an everyday job and let's say we lost our job, and got laid off. Like all those foundational pieces just got turned over March, 13th of last year, right?
Yeah.
So, but in that case, I think in part because it happened to all of us, it was this sense of we're all in it together in some ways. I think when it's kind of us as women, we tend to go inward when we're not feeling calibrated, right? Or kind of off. And it's, for men, the stereotype is they go outward, right? So they look they get a new car or when it's the same, inner struggle, right?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And I think even though we have gone through this as a group, as a world, in terms of the pandemic, everybody feels it individually, of course. It's
right. Exactly.
How am I reacting to this? And you look around and you think, well, everybody else is reacting better than I am or handling it in a more efficient or more productive way. And I'm just falling apart. And so it always comes back to us as an individual.
Right. And really, like the place I start with people, hands down, is let's talk about the emotions and let's have kind of a toolkit for managing them, because no reflection and no planning and no figuring out can happen when we're so scared of the emotions. And it's very natural to be. We all tend to get anxious about our anxiety, right? Or fearful about feeling scared.
Yeah.
So
like you shouldn't. We're going to talk about the shoulds in a moment, right?
Yeah.
Like that you shouldn't feel these negative emotions because, oh my gosh, you're living in such an abundant time. And if you have a house to live in and you have food to eat, you shouldn't feel any kind of negativity or let's say, first world problems. But that's all part of the human experience. So talk a little bit about that.
Is. Well, and that is like, again, both in my work, but my own experience was I went absolutely to the shoulds. Like, I should be fine. I should, appreciate what I have. I should have planned, for adding more to, the work I was doing, or all the shoulds, right? And I do call it shed the shoulds, because the way we talk to ourselves, and the fact that I was making it about me. I mean, it was about me, but it wasn't a should is, I learned this, is the language of non-acceptance. So the minute I'm shoulding, if you will, I'm not willing to embrace what's happening. I'm looking backwards, right? And so if you shed the shoulds and you really start to see, okay, it really doesn't matter. What matters is where I am and where I want to go. And I'm not trying to oversimplify it. It's tough stuff for sure.
It is. I love the term shed the shoulds.
Yeah.
That is so memorable for one thing, but it also gives us a way to accept what's happening now. Because here you are, the only moment we have is right now.
Yeah.
Past is past. Future hasn't come yet. What do you have right now?
Yeah, and it's accepting, and I had a hard time this accepting the ambiguity, right, and the uncertainty, and just be where you are. Like, just like all emotions, like they're temporary, they're gonna pass, but we need to both have a toolkit for dealing with them and, be able to kind of push through to find the growth and the opportunity. I mean, that's like, I literally go like this with my hands to say it's in there, and we're not trying to push the emotions aside, but we're trying to tease out the other stuff. So
yeah, and actually feel them, because there's that phrase that what you resist will persist. So it's not denying that they're there. It's accepting and, as you said, moving through.
Yeah, and the other piece is that we, as a society, or certainly our culture, our American culture, that all growth stops when we hit midlife, and the idea that we watch kids go through major developmental milestones, and then in our 20s, we're changing in so many ways, and into our 30s, and then by late 30s, we have this sense that growth in profound ways stops, and part of that is where the shame and the I'm having a breakdown, even the feeling comes from, because in truth we grow. Growth is infinite. We go through absolutely many growth spurts and many transitional periods throughout our entire lives. And the other misnomer is that people are, especially women, are living so much longer. Like, you're barely at, the second third of your life when you hit midlife, right? You have so much. And so we're kind of using this old school, mentality for aging and thinking about midlife. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. Yes. And we're stuck using, like you said, using antiquated terms or terms that don't fit. I just saw a post on LinkedIn today. Someone was talking, he used a German word, and then the explanation, because he said the English language often doesn't have words like some of other languages have. And to describe what this, I don't remember what the word was even, but to describe it, you need like an entire paragraph to describe this one word. So when you were talking earlier about how we don't have the right words, I'm wondering if there are other languages that have words that better describe.
That's a great
what we're talking about today.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great thought, and it is why I end up talking so much more than I want to. Sometimes I'm like, let me explain it with my hands. Use a lot of words
to get it.
Yeah, and hand
our
motions.
hands. Which if you're just listening to the audio, you can't see, but we both are talking with our hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So.
That makes perfect sense, and that whole piece about. Again, coming back to feeling the emotions, that there's nothing wrong with you in the piece, not just not allowing yourself to feel the emotions, but not understanding what is going on.
Right. And not knowing and needing the time to figure out, and I call it like we focus so much on the what, the roles we play, what we do, my identity, like focuses so much around, I'm a stepmother, I'm a sibling, I'm a, daughter. And
The
those
titles.
are our what. They're not our who, And I know that sounds lofty, but it's absolutely the case. And when we hit these transitional periods, we need to put aside the what's and really tune into who we are. Like what matters to us? What are our values? What, lights us up? What takes energy away from us that we should shed? Like all that stuff. And another key piece is that I think a lot of us women feel like self-centered or guilty for upping the focus on themselves, right?
Yes.
And not all of us. I mean, absolutely. There's plenty of us who have been okay with that and, strong in the identity department and all that. But even they sometimes get hit with, wait a minute, who am I again? And even asking the question, you're not asking what. And the example I give is, and I would like ask anybody listening to try this, like next time, whether it's your own kids, grandkids, or nieces, nephews, or any kid on the street, as a little kid, try asking them not what they want to be when they grow up, but who.
Yes.
Because if we started being asked that at an earlier age, I feel like, we'd be even better adjusted for all these transitions.
I completely agree with you. I've heard that phrasing of that question before. I haven't had an opportunity to use it with the child yet. It's so powerful, right? Because first of all, nobody knows what they want to be when they're a child. They come up with like, fireman, astronaut, whatever, nurse, executive, whatever they've been exposed to. But who? And so coming back to that, that's such a, who do you want to be? I just asked one of my friends, I texted him the other day in the morning, and I said, who do you want to be today? And he was, what? I mean, who do you want to show up as?
Right.
What is your intention for the day?
Well, exactly. That was a great question. I mean, I have a dear friend who didn't ever want to go to cocktail parties or social things for a long time because people would say, what do you do? And she felt she didn't have an answer she liked because at the time she was a stay-at-home mom, which I think is fully reputable job, right?
Sure.
And so we were talking about like, what if somebody said, who are you, not what, right? But the other thing is when you're going through a transition, like when your identity is shifting, and again, using the empty nest or job change or divorce, it's the who that is shifting. I mean, what you do, how you spend your day, all that is changing. But it's the who piece, like, and it doesn't mean like in the empty nest example, you're not letting go of being a parent. How you parent and the relationship shifts. But that is such a dramatic change overnight that, some of the women I work with actually come before their kids leave to prepare for it, which
that's
is
smart.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I think we could all benefit from asking that who question. Who do I want to be? Who do I want to show up as? Who am I becoming? I'm so glad you brought that up because that is really an important thing to focus on.
When I think about, this, I mean, I kind of call it my own little movement here, and it shouldn't be my own little movement, but when I think about what could we all be doing to kind of help debunk the midlife crisis myth, not feel shame or blame or anything close or guilty when we're going through a transitional period of, a growth spurt, I'll call it. One thing we can really do is reframe how we think about it and adopt vocabulary that really supports what it truly is, and a time of midlife reflection and midlife adjustments and midlife doing away with, and from that comes growth and opportunity. If we could use the vocabulary that calls it what it is, and then talk about it far and wide. Don't keep it to ourselves, and talk about it, to the people around us, but also to anyone who, can receive it, because then we start to really change the behavior. And the other piece is to really remember that your who is so much more important than your what. And who you are is how you enact or choose to enact your roles, right? The what. So that's kind of lofty for people, but.
Oh, I love it though. That is such a great place to end this conversation today. Dara, how can people get in touch with you?
I'm on Instagram and Clubhouse at Dara Does Midlife.
Okay, and we'll put that in the show notes. We'll put all of your connections in the show notes too.
Yeah, and then I'm daragoldberg.com.
Fantastic.
And please, anybody should feel comfortable just reaching out for any reason. So
I have so enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing what you shared. This was beautiful.
Thank you, Lori. This was great. Thank you.
All right, so I have stopped recording.